2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And hello, fellows. Herogon here. Today is Thursday, March 16th of 2023. It's now 2:40 p.m. I've already had a nice little snack of Popcorners chips. And so far, college has been going okay. This week is spring break. I didn't have much homework to do other than a little quiz I had to get done before 11:59 p.m. on Friday. So this week, so yeah, things are so far pretty good. It's getting pretty close to end of the semester. I don't know how well I'm gonna do with American history. But let's get to the bits that you've wanted to come and see. In that case, improvements on the fighting game framework, and that's pretty much it, because so far Path of Yao, I'd like to say, is a bit of an unknown with how successful it is. Then again, it is my first game. It's just a 3-level demo, so I don't know. Now, going into the fighting game framework's improvements, this week I got into true fighting game hitboxes. And this episode goes over updating the hitbox system to be more accurate to the true fighting game methods, allowing the hitboxes to be active for more than one frame at a time, and improving projectile collisions. Now, the biggest part is the C++ code with Hitbox Actor. Now we have ourselves some new things here and there, particularly the 3 new little functions and the tick being used: activate hitbox, deactivate hitbox, and check collision. Now, check collision is a blueprint implementable event as well, and we will get to that soon. But first, in the CPP, in our activate and deactivate hitbox, we actually have a new boolean called isActive, which is what we use if we want to know whether our hitbox is still active, or in this case, able to deal damage and detect collisions or not. In the 2 functions of activate hitbox and deactivate hitbox, we set our isActive to true or false. Activate, we set it to true. Deactivate, set it to false. And in our tick function, we've got a new little branch that will update with every tick of the hitbox actor. And only if the hitbox is active do we want to check for collisions each frame of our attack animations. So if is active, then we check collision. Now, that is pretty much almost it. You, of course, want to set the default values for variables within here. Is active is always set to false. And that is about it for the hitbox actor's code. Now, going into the hitbox actor BP itself, we've got a few things changed around, in particular the check collision part, where we now have all of this logic here. Majority of it involves a few things here and there. Get overlapping actors now has a class filter of none. We aren't using any class filters. Literally any actor class can be part of this array going into the for each loop. And one thing to note for checking collision, it should not be projectile, which is why we have that branch logic. Projectile logic is far different. Going further down, we have, of course, casting to the character itself, using complex hitboxes part, which can determine whether or not we're using complex collision, like for something like Tekken, or simpler collision that's a little more like Mortal Kombat 11. Now, if our collision has occurred, then in our true branch, we switch on hitbox enum. For proximity, we do have a collide with proximity hitbox function for automatic blocking reasons, but I instead use manual blocking. For strike and projectile, we receive damage, we set our should ground bounce, and there's a lot of new logic around this point. And that is the deactivate hitbox function. Now, our throw, of course, is quite different too, but we won't get into that yet. Going right into the event begin play stuff, and we've got a few new things around. In our check projectile collision, we have ourselves a few things here. Hitbox display, we get overlapping actors, no class filter needed, and in our loop body, once it's completed, we safely delete our hitboxes. We've got for loop, hitboxes to destroy, length of that -1 is our last index, loop body, destroy actor, and once that part is completed, we clear our hitboxes to destroy. But there's a lot more to it than that. We've got for each loop with a break. Loop body is active. If it's true, then we go further down. If false, we go back to the break here. And the cycle will probably give itself a break for each loop. Then going a little further into things, we of course have our deactivate hitbox stuff here for if our substring is equal to hitbox, getting our component tags, the static mesh component parts of our overlapping components in the hitbox display. It's a bit complicated. I didn't exactly have a script planned for this. I never really do. Now going further down, we of course have this new part called that's a branch. If our actor is being destroyed, we add unique to the for hitboxes to destroy, and the target is the self. And that is a bit of the stuff. Now performing the projectile to projectile collision logic, we've added a new part, this being right here, and that is almost it. One part we should check is the activate hitbox part, where exactly do we put this? It just so happens to be in our spawn hitbox. Now spawn hitbox, of course, is called somewhere. Let me check. I believe we spawn it almost in a few of the animations, and that's pretty easy enough. We switch on hitbox enum. For projectile and hurtbox, things are different. In particular, the projectile, because it's, a projectile, bars throw, strike, and proximity go into the same thing. We set our material depending on what kind of hitbox type it is. Set world location, which is the hitbox transform location. We set visibility based off of game mode, and we activate our hitbox. We don't need to do this for the hurt box because our hurt box essentially acts as our health, where we get our damage. If our hitbox ends up colliding with the hurt box, then we receive damage. A little bit complicated, and that is pretty much it for the parts of the hitbox improvements. But I should also make a note about the improvements to the versus pause menu. I have officially figured out some of my kinks and issues with it, but not everything has been solved. The particular issue was me saying input mode game only instead of input mode game and UI. So let's get into our game itself, and then we can see a bit of the new magic. Of course, we always go into versus practice so you can get a sense of the hitboxes going around. Some of the hitbox parts do get a little kinky at times, so let's get into things. First up is our character. Now, we go into colliding it there, and now it hits on there. If I could have gone out of that quickly, but now that things go like this, things are a bit better for the colliding parts. And of course you can walk into them still and still get hit, so that is pretty useful. Now going into the pause menu itself, here we are now able to move around for the most part, confirm, can press P, and we can even rematch. And that all is pretty easy enough with the newest logic improvements. And before we go, we have ourselves the command list. You can actually go down it and check out whatever little videos, and of course the parts of it. Now do note that the only part I've fully gotten to will have to be the Bloodlighter punch, which is still getting a lot of work to go through, especially with the video files and a lot of other stuff. If I keep going downwards, it goes a little like a scroll box. You can even scroll with it using the mouse too. But of course you would still have to make use of the keyboard controls for that. So far, return is still working out some kinks, but I can go out of that, get control back, then press 4 to confirm and go back to the game. Pretty easy enough, right? Of course, knowing that most of my audience are not game devs that much, there's still a lot of improvements for me to go through with this. Now, I'd like to make a note before I go, but I am not sure if Fight Stars will be in this sort of form of a fighting game, because I'm currently doing different projects. Could the characters from Fight Stars like Adam Mortem appear elsewhere? Well, knowing that I've created Adam Mortem, the character concept myself, he'll probably appear elsewhere, but not as this mutant, obviously. That is a Mixamo model. This is not how I intend Adam Mortem to look. And with that, that is pretty much it for the fighting game framework improvements. credit again goes to Sean the Bro. He's been very helpful for my Unreal Engine development journey. With all that being said, I've been Herogon, you've been you, and thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.